Now, let's update you on so-called Kissgate, this sort of soap opera that's almost developing in Spain. Regional representatives of the Royal Spanish Soccer Federation demanding the immediate resignation of Luis Rubiales for kissing that player, Jenni Hermoso, on the lips at that World Cup.
So far, he has not resigned, but the Federation's move came as the situation has now spiralled into a national row over women's rights, macho behaviour and sexual abuse, with many ministers asking for Rubiales to leave his role.
Let's get more now with sports journalist Ben Jacobs, who can join us. And Ben, there's this sort of very strange bureaucratic situation where they can ask him to resign, they can try and suspend him, but they can't sack him, it seems.
Seemingly at the moment, and part of that is also because there's an ongoing investigation. So Rubiales has been suspended for a period of 90 days whilst FIFA determine whether or not they can proceed, and any result of that particular investigation will have a bearing within the football community and how the Spanish FA can act. And then at the same time, there's been a preliminary investigation opened by the National Court, which is the top criminal court in Spain, to determine whether this would constitute a form of sexual assault. And it would also require, within the next 15 days, the player herself, Jenni Hermoso, to potentially file a complaint. So we've got a provisional criminal investigation, we've got a FIFA investigation, we've got the regional leaders of the Spanish Football Federation also calling for the resignation of Luis Rubiales, and yet he's stuck to his position. And we know a few days ago he said publicly, not once but 3 times, he will not resign. So this is kind of becoming Spain's Me Too moment, but it's also been very poorly handled. And as you say, there's a lot of bureaucratic red tape. And I think if Rubiales had apologised and showed contrition and probably stood down as well in the immediate aftermath, then he could have prevented what's now become a far bigger scandal and situation for not just Rubiales, but the Spanish Football Federation to deal with.
A few people, it appears, to be backing him is his mother. She's on the second day of a hunger strike inside a Spanish church, and we're just looking at pictures of that church. And outside, actually, I think there's quite a few locals, supporters of her gathering.
Yes, this is Rubiales' mother, as you say, Angelis Bayar, who has locked herself in a Spanish church and gone on a hunger strike in protest of what she believes is the treatment against her son. And whereas you can understand anybody's perspective and a mother sticking up for her son, the protest is very much going against the grain, because Spanish politicians, Spanish footballers, 81 players from all of the Women's World Cup winning squad and many past players, male players, the wider football community, FIFA Pro, and I think the average football fan have all seen the footage and all realised that it was entirely inappropriate to kiss Jenni Hermoso on the lips. So there's only one way this is going to end, which is eventually, through one way or the other, Rubiales being removed from his position. But it's very painful, it's very public, and it shows you that the Spanish FA and the wider football culture needs to change, because Rubiales represents a variety of different problems, and this incident has brought them to the fore. And it's such a shame, because we should be talking about the incredible journey of the Spanish women's national team winning a World Cup. And instead, we're talking about Luis Rubiales.
Where does Spain's coach figure in this? Because he seems to have been a little silent, doesn't he?
Well, Jorge Vilda came out and said that Rubiales' behaviour was inappropriate, but there were a variety of figures, including Vilda, who was sitting in the room when Rubiales said that he wasn't going to resign, and they were either applauding or nodding or didn't speak out at that time. And that was probably the time to speak out. Now I think everyone is speaking, including Vilda. But remember, he's had his own scandal in the build-up to the World Cup. 15 players originally said they wouldn't play for him because they didn't like the management style and they wanted structural changes within the Spanish Football Federation and the women's team specifically. And only 3 of those 15 ended up going to the World Cup. So this is back-to-back scandals in between winning a Women's World Cup, one for the coach before that is still ultimately ongoing, and now Luis Rubiales, the president of the Spanish FA. So it's not a good look. And again, we should be talking about the football, and sadly we're not.
Now, where do we go from here? Because we've got the Spanish FA, we've got UEFA, we've got FIFA at the top of the tree, who have suspended him, I think, a 90-day period. Do they actually have the power in their disciplinary weaponry, if you like, just to remove him eventually?
Well, there's a lot of appeals processes. So the short answer is yes, but the long answer is no. And that is particularly important to stress if there is to be a process within Spain's national court. So FIFA effectively will have to bow first and foremost to a criminal case should one progress. And then, based on the result of that, they can act. Within FIFA, they could also take steps to remove Rubiales, but there's a lengthy appeal process that could ultimately see him go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. So if Rubiales wants to stay in his position, he can fight this over many weeks, which is unfortunate because it will continue to create headlines. But FIFA technically have the power.
Okay.
It's a bit more complicated than that.
There's quite a glittering occasion tonight, isn't there, Ben? The Football Player of the Year awards. Who do you think is going to take the top prize there?
Yes, men and women are going to be given awards, both at senior level, if you like, for the Players of the Year, and also for the Young Player of the Year too. We've got the likes of Erling Haaland, Bukayo Saka, Rachel Daly, and Sam Kerr. They're probably the main contenders. On the men's side, there's heavy Manchester City representation because they, of course, won the treble. Kevin De Bruyne and John Stones are there, but Erling Haaland is in likelihood the favourite. I think on the women's side, it's a little bit harder to call. Keep an eye on Rachel Daly. She had an incredible season. And Sam Kerr is in there as well and is always going to be one of the favourites as well.
I do wonder, given what's been happening in Spain, whether perhaps the women's winner will get a more robust round of applause maybe today, or tonight rather.
Well, I think we should be treating both awards equally anyway, rather than necessarily giving more emphasis to one or the other because of the circumstances in Spain. But it is going to be better and ultimately more helpful to be focusing again on awards and on football. So hopefully what we'll see tomorrow morning is less headlines about Spain, unless Rubiales finally does the right thing and just stands down, and more headlines about winners and celebrating both male and female footballers.
That could be wishful thinking, but we'll see. Sports journalist Ben Jacobs, really appreciate your insight this afternoon. Thank you.